All right, guys, what's going on? Holy cow, it's only Monday. I've only been up for 3 hours, and there is a lot going on in the world, a lot going on in our little world here, a lot going on in the online world, some things that I'm very proud of and excited for at the moment that some of you, at least on Twitter, probably are aware of already, and a lot going on in the larger world. I don't know if you know about this, but a lot of people involved in this congressional hearing thing going on with Trump right now. We're going to talk about all that. We just passed, this is the reason why we're doing this live stream, because as of this morning, the Rubin Report YouTube channel just passed 100 million views. 100 million views. That's 100. The point is there's a lot of zeros, okay? I'm very excited, but it's not even really excitement. I'm honored and truly humbled by the fact that this thing has taken off in the way it has. And when I say that, really, it's from when we started at Aura TV, which was September of 2015, when I changed the show. I was doing a different show altogether beforehand. I'll get to that in a sec. But I was doing a different show, and then we changed the show and decided to do an interview show when we had that first sit down with Sam Harris that many of you have seen, obviously. And my intention when we did that was I was doing a one-off interview. I had wanted to get involved in that whole conversation related to Sam and Affleck and Bill Maher and that whole thing. And my intention was to sit down with Sam, clean up some of the mess, the lies, the dispersions, all of that stuff, and then go forward, and that's it. But the second we finished that interview, I just knew this was what I was supposed to do. I really did. Like, I had that moment, you know, that moment that people have in a movie, right? I had it. The light bulb went off. And then since then, things have just taken off, and especially in the last couple months, we're on such a great trajectory here, and it makes me want to be a better person, to loosely paraphrase Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets. I feel that I have to be better at what I do and be a better person because so many people send me nice things and are affected by the things that I say and the conversations that I'm having and all that good stuff. And that has so much to do with you guys. So I thank you as always for all that. So there's a bunch of things. So 100 million views. I thought, we have so many new people here. Something in the last month or so, we have about 45,000 subscribers. We're at about 420,000 subscribers now. We just hit 400 about, I don't know, what was it, 8 days ago or so? So this thing's tracking, but because I know we have so many new people, and by the way, you guys know how much I love this incredibly politically diverse audience. Diversity is not just about color and sexuality and religion and race and all of those things and nationality. It's not just about that. It's also about diversity of thought. That is the more important diversity. And I'm incredibly proud of the fact that we have people all over the political map that I get messages from every single day saying, I like this that you talked about and I don't like this. And I'm a Christian conservative and I think this. I'm a new atheist and I think this. I'm an Orthodox Jew and I think this. I'm an ex-Muslim and I think this. I mean, that's incredible. It's diversity of thought that matters, not just what color you are. That is actually the reverse of what true diversity should be. That's how you peg people into collectivism. Okay, you know my feelings on that. So yeah, 100 million views. And because we have some new people, I thought I would just quickly spend a minute or two just giving you guys a little bit of my adventure to get here. By the way, we've enabled Superchat, which I think is one of the greatest tools that, YouTube's constantly evolving and doing their thing so that they can figure out better ways for us to interact. And I don't have to tell you guys that the YouTube comment section can be quite bananas. By the way, our comment section on our videos for a long, long time was just completely on point, and everybody was debating issues and all that stuff. As we've grown just in the last 2 months, the comment section has gone a little haywire because a certain amount of haters just come in, they don't watch the videos, they immediately just start fighting with people and all that stuff. And I guess that's just it's one of the small downsides of success. That's fine. There's plenty of other ways that I can interact with people and see what people are thinking. And there's, by the way, there's a lot of good stuff going on in there too. So that's okay. But anyway, one of the things that YouTube's doing now is this super chat thing, which depending on whether you throw in a couple bucks or a big chunk of change, your comment gets boosted up top. We're able to see it. I'll do some Q&A and all that good stuff. Okay. Oh, by the way, a lot of people have been asking, what is our intro music? to the show. You know, we play our banner in front of all our videos, and we give you an extended version of it. You know, before we do these live streams. It is called Sunset Beach by Score Squad. But don't tell everybody about that, because I don't want everybody knowing that that's our music, because then they'll start using it and they'll claim that they found it and we found it. And I love these guys and they're doing good work. And by the way, when we were figuring out the music, we went through like 1,000 different things to figure it out. We listened to really probably hundreds, if not thousands of things. I got Emma in here. She's scratching right now. So if you hear a little collar clicking, that's going on there over there. Okay, so we'll do some Q&A and all that stuff. But so I wanted to just fill you in, for those of you who don't know, a little bit about my adventure. I did stand up in New York City for 12 years. Yeah, I used to be funny. I'm going to start being funny again. I feel the beginnings of humor coming back to me lately. But, you know, we've been doing a bit of a more serious show here, but I think you guys see the pieces of it. And as I've said many times, the left has become so preachy and unfunny, and all these comedians that I used to admire and respect who have just bitch and moan all day long and don't use comedy to win anymore. They use censorship or the ideas of censorship or belittling or any of this stuff. It's forcing me back into stand-up. So I have a whole bunch of college stuff coming. I'm going to be at University of Austin. I'm going to be at University of Southern California. I'm going to be at Tucson, University of Arizona in Tucson. I'm going to be in Dallas doing some stuff. And I'm going to be in Pittsburgh. I'm going to be doing something in Milwaukee. I have a whole bunch of stuff planned that's going to incorporate a little more stand-up into the free speech realm. So anyway, so I did stand-up for about 12 years in New York. Eventually started doing a podcast, a very successful podcast, which was called The Six Pack. And it was one of the first LGBT podcasts. I think it was the #1 LGBT podcast. We were high on the comedy thing too. We did interviews and news and some fun stuff. And it really took off, and we eventually got on Sirius XM, and I was there for about a year and a half or so. Maybe it was a little more than that. And I love radio. I love long form talk. I mean, when I have a conversation with someone here, my belief is we don't worry about commercial breaks. We don't have commercial breaks. Let's just actually extrapolate an idea. Let's learn something. Let's listen and hear and all that stuff. And so I do love radio, but I quickly realized that by being on Sirius XM, because it's all contained, you're only getting to Sirius XM subscribers, it was really limiting. You know, like we could only go so far because other people couldn't find us. And I realized that I wanted to be seen again. And then I met the guys over at the Young Turks, and at first, obviously, everything was great over there, and they brought me in, and I was happy to be there. And that's where we launched the Rubin Report. And originally, it was a panel show, a little more like Hot Topics on The View, and that's where we learned sort of the YouTube game and all that stuff. And then, without getting into the nitty gritty, I mean, my politics and their politics really, really divided, and I was unhappy, obviously, with some of the treatment of Sam and some of that kind of stuff. And we moved over to Riot. A lot of you guys probably don't know about this. We were at a place called riot.org for about 3 months. They were a startup that wanted to get into the news space, and I was kind of going to be the flagship show. And they were super cool and a great group of people. And it was a fun, like, young atmosphere. But we quickly realized that my desire to do more direct political stuff, and they were sort of going into 360 video, which, by the way, I think they've won some Emmys or Oscars for, or been nominated for things, and they were bought by HuffPo. We kind of realized that our paths were diverging, but it was completely amicable, and I'm still friends with all of them. So we moved over, and then I moved to Aura TV, and as you guys know, Aura TV is partially owned by Larry King, and I had had discussions with them for a long time, and Larry has become a friend and a mentor to me, which is beyond imagination if I would have thought about that, 15, 20 years ago, or when I was a kid. Watching Larry King. And we were on Aura TV for about 9 months. And what I realized in that time was that the show was blowing up so much, and we were hitting on something that was so important that eventually I realized that we should be doing it on our own, that the Aura people were great. I'm still friends with Larry, and I have breakfast with him sometimes. And I guest host on his show and all that stuff. I loved everything that was going on there, and we learned so much. David and Amira, by the way, I should give David and Amira a shout out, who've been with me this whole time and who have helped, that I'm up here talking, but that they make the rest of this thing purr. We learned so much there through our whole adventure, that we were together at TYT and at Riot and at Aura, that we just thought we could do this on our own. And then, and this is an interesting piece to Colin Moriarty, who I want to talk about, we found out about this thing called Patreon, where your audience could fund your operation, and depending on what you offer them, they can do different tiers of money. And we saw that Kinda Funny, which Colin was a part of and one of the creators. We saw they were just killing it on there, and I thought we could do this. Let's just try it. And we had some serious heart-to-hearts, the three of us, and we decided to do it. We gave up our salaries and our health insurance and the whole thing, and we said, let's go ahead and do this thing. And the night before we launched, I said to David and Amir, I said, it could all be over tomorrow, and we just don't know. Like, are people going to put their money where their mouth is? We simply don't know. And I'm happy to say that you guys came through for us, and it's been incredible success since then. And just in the last few months, as you know, and then I'll move on to some other stuff. I was able to buy a house, which allowed me to create a home studio here, which has completely, absolutely changed everything we do. The flexibility that we have, getting rid of an hour each way to commute to various studios because LA traffic is terrible. Our workflow is 1,000 times better. Our ability to get different guests. If you've noticed, we've done a lot more in-studio guests lately than Skype people. YouTube week notwithstanding, because we are complete flexibility. If a guest says, well, I can only come in at 8 o'clock at night or 4 in the morning, we can make that work now. And it's just changed our ability to have more time to do work, and I can actually read again a little bit and a few other things. And it's completely changed everything, and that's because of you guys. And as I said before, the beauty of that is that because of the diversity of the audience, I don't even know where everyone falls politically. I can only do what I think is right. I can't even if I wanted to pander. I see people say, he's pandering to his patrons. I genuinely don't know what most of the vast 90% of them think. I do certain people I have tiers with where we do small group chats, or I do one-on-one chats with people depending on how much you give. But they even have a diverse group of thoughts and all that. So anyway, it's been an incredible journey, and I'm very excited that you guys have been here. So all right, so we're jumping up on the super chat. So if you throw some questions in, I'll do those live. I want to mention a couple other things, including what happened on Friday with Colin Moriarty, and then the absurdly bonkers success that he's having today, which I could not possibly be prouder of, which is really, really awesome. Okay, so a couple things. One question. First, and I just want to say that they're just sending me this right now. We got 156 new patrons just in the last week alone. These are people that if you put in $1, you put in $2, some people put up $250. It all goes back into the show and helps us expand, and I'm going to get into some of the expansion in a little bit as well. Okay, first question that I see here, did SiriusXM not allow you to do side projects? No, they absolutely did, but to do a show properly, I think, you have to fully be in it. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be what you do, what you care about. We were also trying to build a business and build something sustainable. So they did allow us to continue our podcast while we were at SiriusXM. I think at the time, we may have been the only people that they allowed to do that. And we traded that for money. So we took less money so that we could continue doing the podcast. I just felt that I was too trapped there. It was just, you guys know what it's like. Most of you have a job. If you have a job, it's hard to have another job at the same time. So I think we did what I think we felt we needed to do. Okay, with these issues of character assassinations and minimal dialogue being put out in the mainstream media, how do you think we should have a discussion on both sides, right and left, without resorting to character assassinations? Try to be a little better yourself. And by the way, when I say this, I mean this even for me. The way I am on the show here and the respectful way and mature and thought out way that I treat my guests here is a little different, by the way, than my behavior on Twitter, which sometimes I can get into some trolling and some zingers and one-upmanship, because each of these mediums, you treat them differently. And every now and again, I'll say something on Twitter, and even if it gets a lot of traction, I'll go, maybe I could have worded that a little differently, or not so gone for the jugular. I'm not mean, I'm not wildly offensive or any of that kind of stuff. But I think the most important thing is what Colin talked about on Friday. Enough. We have all had enough. We've had enough with smearing, and we've had enough character assassinations, and the politics of destruction, and the lying and the bullshit and the partisan nonsense. Even Twitter this morning, so because we were preparing for this and a few other things, I haven't watched much of the congressional hearing from this morning. You know, they're doing the Trump wiretapping stuff, and they have Comey speaking and a couple other people. And just scroll, if you just look at Twitter, it's as if we live in two worlds. Now, first off, Twitter is not real life. That should be the quote from this thing. Twitter is not real life, in case you didn't know that. So when you see people that only see things one way constantly, oh no, the Democrats are always right. The Democrats are always right. The Republicans are always right. And these are partisan people that you can just move them out of the way. We want some space here, right? We want this new center. You got to move these people out of the way. I mean, I see so many people today that I basically respect and like, that just, yes, everything that they're saying is true. Everything they're saying is true. You know, let's not forget that James Clapper, who was the former head of the FBI, he lied under oath about whether they were being wiretapped or whether they were wiretapping us. Remember that? Where he was scratching his head on the top because, you know, as they say in Seinfeld, when you're lying, you touch your face, and the higher up you go means the bigger the lie. So we have no idea what is true out of this. We got to let some of it shake out anyway. But I don't want to comment on that too much because I haven't watched the whole thing. The bigger piece there is the partisan nature of all of this, that everyone is just picking a team. And if the facts were completely the same, but it was a Democrat in power, the Democrats would be screaming the other way and the Republicans would be screaming the other way. This is not how our society is supposed to work. You're supposed to have principles and not over party, okay? You have to principles over party. So I think just stop doing it and stop accepting it. If you see someone lying repeatedly, if you see someone using character assassinations, and if you see someone just throwing out meaningless buzzwords instead of making an argument, make an argument, a sound, coherent argument. I will always respect that, even if I don't agree with it. So if someone came in here and said, you know what, Dave, you've been completely wrong on social justice. Choosing people as a collective is actually better than choosing as an individual because A, B, C, D, blah, 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 and made a coherent argument for it. Guess what? I have Van Jones coming on soon. I think he does buy into a lot of that stuff. I basically respect him. I think he's actually suffered from a little bit of the SJW stuff lately because he's said a few things nicely about Trump and he gets attacked now from the left. Keith Olbermann called him a sellout. And it's just silliness. But if someone made a cogent argument, I would treat them with the exact same respect I treat everyone else. By the way, I've had people do this on my very show. My friend John Fugelsang made a lot of those arguments. Areva Martin made several of those arguments. Michael Ian Black made several of those arguments. Margaret Cho made several of those arguments. Hillary Rosen, who's a progressive who I had on 2 or 3 days before the election, made a lot of those arguments. But I know people only want to see what they want to see. That's okay. Is Mark Duplass coming on the show a sure thing? Yes, he is booked. I think it's in the next couple weeks. It's 100% going to happen. This is a $20 super chat. The world needs more people like Rick Rubin. I think you mean Dave Rubin, although a lot of people do call me Rick Rubin. He's the president of Columbia Records, if I'm not mistaken. But I am not Rick Rubin. I'm not related to Rick Rubin. But maybe you're not even a fan of mine and you're in the wrong live stream. That's possible too. I see someone here just said, what do you think about Van Jones and the reaction from the left about him? And will he be a guest? I just answered that. Absolutely. And this is the problem. What the left as a general rule, right? Not every single person. What the left as a general rule is putting out right now is that if you deviate from thought at all, they have to destroy you. And that's why myself and a bunch of people have called this like, it's a snake that will eat itself. So Van, who is purely on the left, without question, I'm sure he identifies as a progressive and all of those things. He said 1 or 2 nice things about Trump the night after Trump gave that big speech, you know, the not State of the Union speech that he gave. And immediately they launched an attack on him. Keith Olbermann calling him a sellout, getting thousands of retweets. Think how insane that is. How about Keith Olbermann watching it and going, all right, man, I had a difference of opinion. I don't think it was a great speech, but there you go. But they don't want diversity of thought. And I see this consistently, which is why I can be pro-choice and for gay marriage and for public education and for legalizing marijuana and for reforming the prison system, all things that are thought of as soundly on the left and liberal ideas. And I can sit across from people like Beck and Prager and Shapiro and plenty of other conservatives, and we are able to have a fully enlightened conversation when we disagree on almost all of those things because they're okay with diversity of thought. So diversity of thought happens to be something that's a little more conservative right now. Maybe that will change, and these things do ebb and flow. So there you go. Dave, do you see any meaningful distinctions between the progressive left and the regressive left at this point? If so, what are they? I mean, look, again, I'm really struggling with this, and maybe you guys can help me on this. The labeling stuff, as I've said many times, we needed certain labels for things. You need a label. When you say liberal, it means X, and when you say progressive, it means Y. And conservative is different than Republican, which is different than libertarian, which is different than anarcho-capitalist, and all of these things. You need some labels to define things, and then at the same time, labels become exhausting because you end up catching, you're laying a wide net usually, unless you have a gajillion labels for everything. You're labeling a wide net, and you're gonna end up catching people that don't quite fit in that label. So at the moment, I don't see any difference between what I would describe as the regressive left and the mainstream left, the mainstream progressive movement. Does that not mean that there are progressives out there who would absolutely fight for free speech? Sure, there aren't many that I can find, at least in a public sense. But I don't see that distinction. So the distinction that's important to me is showing people that liberalism, Google liberalism, what real liberalism is different than what the progressives are selling you. Liberalism is truly live and let live. I view other people in a liberal sense so they can do what they want and I can do what I want. It sounds like libertarianism. We've discussed this 1,000 times before, but I'm gonna keep discussing it because guess what? There aren't a lot of people discussing it. People say, Rubin's saying the same thing every couple of weeks. Keeps repeating himself. Seems to be working. Seems to be making a dent, and that's what they're afraid of because they don't want you to make a dent. So, he's a white supremacist. He's a Nazi. Okay. Here we go. More on, we're jumping on the super chat. This is good. What do you think, what are your thoughts on the Tomi Lahren controversy and how conservatives have treated her? So I don't know how many of you saw this, but Tomi Lahren from The Blaze, which is Glenn Beck's network, was, and actually I think we have her coming on the show. She was on The View, I believe, and made a point to say that as a conservative, as a small government person, that she can't be pro-life because she wants you to do what you want with your body. I think that's basically an understandable position that I pretty much prescribe to myself, that I, as a small government person, wouldn't want to tell a woman what to do with her body. Now, I think you can make an absolutely principled position, argument, that being pro-life means you're protecting the ultimate individual, which is the fetus, right? Now, we can have the back and forth, and I want to do more on this for sure, about when does life start? And this is for philosophers and religious people and scientists and everybody to have the incredible debate on. But the second the sperm meets the egg, if you had an abortion, if you had you did the Plan B the next day, is that murder? I would argue no. But 3 months in, is that different? Certainly, 100%, 6 months in, is that different? And I know people that would be okay. I had a guest on the show who said that even 1 week before that fetus is out, so 8 months in, 8 months and 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, that an abortion would be okay. I would not be okay with that because that obviously is a sustainable life. This is an extremely complex thing, and you see people on the left and they'll scream, oh, people on the right who are pro-life, they hate women. And people on the right will say, people on the left who are pro-choice, they hate babies. And it's like, neither one of these things are true. So I definitely want to do more on this, and I don't think she should have got the shit that she should have. I don't think it was fully warranted, but people can say whatever they want, obviously. How do you feel about managing disruptive people and those who are not for holding civil discussion in the context of valuing free speech, for instance, in the comment sections or at conferences? Well, look, you can use your speech to counter speech. This is the societal contract we have. Someone is allowed to say something and you're allowed to counter it. So this is one of the interesting things that's happening on the left right now. Imagine this. Imagine if the most far left person came to a university, a true Marxist, communist, far lefty who wanted to destroy capitalism, destroy America, all of these things. They would be welcomed on virtually every college campus in the United States. No doubt. Think about it for a second. Would any college campus stop them from coming? Probably not. They would speak in front of a couple people, maybe a couple pro-liberty people or the young Republicans or something would show up and stand outside and say, boo, you're not good. There would be no violence, and most likely those people would not even show up. This person would come and speak, their shitty ideas would be heard, and that would be that. Now picture what happens when conservatives come. By the way, I'm not just talking about people who intentionally inflame someone like Milo. I'm talking about a standard bearer conservative who is not putting out that many controversial ideas. They're just conservative thoughts, like Ben Shapiro. What happens? Violence. He gets kicked off campuses. I've had protesters show up when I've spoke with Peter Boghossian and Christina Hoff Sommers. This is the problem. The censorship's only coming from one side. So as far as comment sections, look, you can say whatever you want. Again, as long as it's not a direct threat to violence, you can say whatever you want. What's a shame is that we all get lost in the mob mentality. So what I referenced earlier about our comment section, I've been so proud of our comment section for a couple of years now. It was unlike anything on YouTube. Now as the show has gotten bigger, a certain amount of trolls come in, they just start fighting immediately. They obviously don't watch the videos and all of that stuff. And then it kind of ruins it. By the way, we have a great interactive community going on Patreon, because literally for $1, you can weed out all the trolls. The trolls aren't going to pay you for $1. So for $1, I have a great community of people going back and forth, and I need to invest more time in that, is what I've realized, because we can have honest civil discourse there. But obviously I'm not for banning or censoring any of these people. But I should address something, because sometimes people say this to me, that I have gotten in the habit of blocking a few more people on Twitter lately, and my policy is this. I don't block you for disagreeing with me, and I don't block you for saying something, you don't like me or something like that. But I will block people who relentlessly tweet me or who consistently lie about me or edit clips or any of that stuff. And the reason I do it, first off, has nothing to do with free speech. I'm just not listening to them, which is completely fine. That's called freedom. What I don't want is these people. I want to make it a little harder. I guess it will make it a teeny tiny bit harder for the relentless troll to troll me and then get into fights with my audience, who are, for the most part, really good, decent people who are diverse again. So that's my policy on it. Why do you think GQ's given Keith Olbermann a platform, considering his history of being essentially blacklisted from the mainstream media? I don't know. I really don't know what's going on there. He seems like he's lost a screw. I would be happy to talk to him. But again, he's become, to me, the sort of prototypical far leftist who, if you disagree with him on anything, he screams about treason and hysterics and I'll put it this way, it's not what I'm trying to do. That I'm really not trying to convince you of anything. I'm trying to tell you what I think. That's it. I believe in liberty and freedom of expression and freedom of speech. I do believe in capitalism. Our system could be fixed. It could be better. But I want the roots of what our founding fathers created here in the United States, which has given more success to more people in the history of the world than anywhere else. I want that to be strengthened. But I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just telling you what I think. That's why I don't berate you, and I don't yell at you, and I don't shame you and the rest of it. Dave, would you agree that generally speaking, the left and right is basically emotional versus logical? You know, if you would have asked me this maybe a year or two ago, I probably would have said no, but I have been leaning a little more in that line of thinking. I do see it now that most people on the left are not dealing with the world as it is. They're dealing with the world as they want it to be. They think if only their people were in power, if only Bernie was in power, if only their government was in power, we could eliminate racism, we could eliminate poverty, we could eliminate all these things. It's just silly. It's just silly, and it's emotional-based thinking, as Ben Shapiro would say. It's fiction, it's fiction over fact. What does he say? Fact over feeling is what he says. And they're using feelings over facts. The right, I do see, I don't want to say the right. I do generally see people who say that they're conservatives right now are a little more inclined to look at facts instead of just feelings. And that's the thing, is if you get people by feelings, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. And that's why they use those words, racism, bigot, and all of those things. Because it's a powerful way of getting people not to think straight, but just to, that's it, that's right, I'm morally superior. Everyone who thinks something else is evil or a Nazi or any of that stuff. And by the way, I'll get to more questions in just a sec, but this is a good point for a quick transition. So Colin Moriarty, who I had on YouTube two or 3 weeks ago, subsequently gotten a ton of shit, you guys all know this already, for a International Women's Day tweet that was a totally benign tweet. He subsequently stepped down from his company, Kinda Funny, which I've mentioned we've based our Patreon off of. Even though I didn't know much about them, I just saw them killing it on there, and I thought, these guys are doing something right. As of this morning, I'm so proud of this guy. I'm so absolutely proud of Colin and what he's doing. As of this morning, he launched his Patreon at about 10 a.m. our time Pacific here. It was, last I checked before I started this live stream, it was at about 16,000. So David or Ramira could let me know if it's above that now. But that's crazy, and I'm so proud. And what that shows is we don't need the mainstream bullshit anymore. I've mentioned before, I've turned down two fairly huge offers on this show that would have given me far more long-term security than I have right now, just in the last couple weeks. But we don't need it. I want to be beholden to my own mind and to my audience, and that's it. And that's what I've got, and it's beautiful, and I see Colin going down that route. But I mention this now because Colin, if you watch our live stream, again, it went up on Friday, Colin said something about, and his show is called Colin's Last Stand. And this is what we all need to do right now. This outrage culture, this destructive force, these buzzwords, they're making everyone crazy, and they're ripping us apart, and there's never anything good that comes out of it. All it does is figure out a way to dice and slice us, okay? But by making a stand, I will not accept this bullshit anymore. I will not accept the destructive policies that you guys are doing. I will not be silenced by your buzzwords. I will say what I think. I will not demand that someone is fired because they said this or that, or I will not protest somebody because of a joke, or I will not burn down a university because of a speaker I don't like. We all need to take a stand right now. And when Colin said it, he said it really beautifully, and it's reinvigorated me to continue on that push. Dave, can you please bring on an intelligence expert to talk about Russia and the 2016 election? Absolutely. I've been trying to get Gary Kasparov on. He's not specifically a intelligence expert, but we've been trying to get him. And who do you recommend? Let me know who you recommend on that. Oh, I like this one. Since Lauren Southern and Colin are now independent, any chance of coming together in a new media channel? Interesting. Very interesting. What do you think about the fact that even though we have 10% of the American population, so much of the centrist, rational, anti-regressive voices are from Canada? That's interesting. I've mentioned that I have a lot of patrons from Canada that I do the chats with, the group chat and the one-on-ones. It's a disproportionately high amount of people from Canada, and I've asked them about this. Why do I see so many people so fighting for what I believe to be the right things in Canada? And a few people have said the same thing to me, which is that Canadians are generally so polite to each other publicly. And maybe this is because the country hasn't gone to a lot of wars and they're sparse population-wise and all that stuff. But they're so polite that they've been dumbed into political correctness because they don't want to offend anybody. And that this is now becoming a risk. So I think Canadians maybe are waking up to it a little bit more. By the way, we get a ton of viewers. Sweden, which I know is becoming a buzzword depending on where you fall politically, but I have a ton of viewers in Sweden also that come from basically a Western homogeneous society that has had trouble with immigration and integrating people and assimilation. And now there's all kinds of problems there. And they're realizing that they have to fight the tide of this regressive nonsense. So Canada is an interesting one because it's based in politeness, which I think is kind of interesting. Okay, so, all right, so I don't have a ton of time today because I do have a whole bunch of other things to do and I have a bunch of meetings and some other things. So I can try to knock out a couple questions if you want to jump on the super chat. But I do want to mention two other things. So to celebrate our 100 million views, which again, I'm humbled and honored by, we are going to do another fan show. If you didn't see our original fan show, I spent a day, this is when we were back at Aura, we interviewed 20 fans from all over the world in a row, people from all over the place, from Egypt and Jordan and Sweden and Canada and Brazil and and the United States, obviously, and Britain, the UK, and blah, blah, blah. So we're going to do this again. I did 20 interviews in a row. It was one of the most rewarding days of my entire life. Seeing people from every background and every color, all that social justice nonsense, but people who wanted to talk about ideas, more important than anything else. We got about 1,400 responses. The show is probably twice as big now as it was then. So I suspect we're going to get an insane amount of responses. So, and by the way, we have a tier on Patreon that gives you a little preferential treatment on that. But what we're going to do is I'm going to put up a separate video, not in this video right now. I'm going to put up a separate video in the next day or so that's going to have a link and an explanation of exactly what you have to do. You know, last time when we did this, we didn't give any sort of character limit, and people wrote us. It was crazy. We read all of them. We literally, Amira, David, and I, we took about 500 each. And we all picked our best, then we cross-referenced those to really whittle it down to people that we thought would be interesting and give a whole series of thoughts. But we didn't give a character limit, so people were writing essays. I mean, pages and pages and pages and pages of essays, which is great and it was fun to read and all that, but we simply don't have the time for that. So we're gonna pick some, you know, we'd like people to write maybe a paragraph or a couple sentences, who you are, why you wanna be on the show, you know, maybe some political thoughts, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't have to be about just politics, of course. And we're going to do that. And we'll do a whole week of fan shows. Maybe we can air some of them live. I don't know. Well, I probably am going to get in trouble for saying that. We'll see about that. But we'll put up a separate video on that, and I'm very excited. It was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. Any of you know what this is like. When you do something good and then people acknowledge that and say, I want to be a part of that, it's incredible. And really, that was as rewarding as certainly as any interview I've done. And it was so cool. And people had things to say, and they were not afraid to say them, which is really the best part of it. So that was what I want to say. And then one final thing, and then we're going to go unless some magical super chat comes in right this second. We have huge plans for the future, and I think I hinted to some of them a moment ago with a moment of silence or a slight pause. We've got a lot of big things coming, and we've got the infrastructure now to get this right. You know, Patreon's cooking. It gives us our budget to go ahead and build. The show is growing, so because of that, our YouTube rev goes up. It also gives us a chance to have a company that has strong bones that we can advance from. You know, my thing really was that when we went independent, the idea of expanding too fast, I didn't want to build out too fast and realize, wow, we didn't do all the work beneath it. You know, get the foundation right so that once we start building, you got to have a strong foundation for everything else. We've gotten so much of that in place. So I think interviews, you know, a lot of you have asked about doing more debates with two people or having conversations even. I wouldn't even frame it as a debate. Having conversations with people that believe different things and with me moderating and facilitating. Doing something that maybe is a little more in line with like a weekly news thing. Partnering up with great people that are doing cool stuff that are working on their own. Like Colin and Lauren and a couple other people. There's so much richness and opportunity out there now, and I intend to grab it and do something better than we've even done thus far. And at the same time, double down on doing solid interviews and continuing to tell you guys what I think about things and all that stuff. All right, so I literally have a meeting in a couple minutes, so I do have to run. But as always, thank you guys for tuning in, checking it out. We'll see once, you know, we do the live thing here and then we post these. I suspect in the live thing here, the comments were pretty on point, at least the ones that I was able to see, because I get a very filtered down version because they're sending me the super chats. But as always, we glance through everything. We like to see what you guys are saying, even those of you that don't like us, as long as you're not just like a relentless troll who only comes on. And we know a couple of you. If you just come on and just fight with everybody, come on, find something else to do. Buy a PlayStation 4. I just got one. Pretty good. It's pretty good. Okay, cool. So that's it. 100 million views. Thank you guys. We're building out. I'm so proud of what's going on here. If you didn't check out the video with Colin on Friday, I really think it was one of the most, we live streamed it. It was a follow-up. We did a little Q&A. I really felt it got to the heart of everything I've been trying to do here, and I'm so proud of his success, and I suspect that this core group of people that we've been building out here from different political places and different geographic places and all that, I suspect that that's going to keep getting bigger and strengthened, and it is because of you guys. So thank you, and good luck.